Well, she and I guess you would say MTV has certainly got their complete return on investment in terms of bringing back Sammy Sweetheart. To me, as you follow this channel, I've always consistently, at least since I guess the announcement of Jersey Shore when they were like, "Oh, they're coming back, Family Vacation," which unbelievable. It's been on so many seasons. Not that it's bad in any way, but who would have thought, right? And the one thing, and I've said this before on past episodes. Oh, and as a note, I should say, if you want to see the past episodes, they are all linked on the same hashtag, which is called hashtag randomly with Ronnie Jr., where I, of course, I always tell you, worked in radio, in and around radio for and television for many years. So lots and lots of experiences, therefore, lots and lots of episodes. I think getting upwards towards 700 on this platform alone and almost nine something collectively. Anyways, I say that to say when Jersey Shore was first announced to come back, I was like, oh, okay, this is exciting, because it had been enough time. And there is certainly the nostalgia. You grow older, they grow older. Now, the cast, of course, is younger than myself. However, it's still like, yes, I'm into it. And I do remember, I think a season before, not a season, but like a little bit before Jersey Shore Family Vacation even got announced, there was this show on was it the E channel where they did like reunions of, I guess, like epic cast members or whatever shows that were from back in the day. And I remember they did it on, I think, the Queer Eye cast on the E channel, Jersey Shore on the E channel. And I think, if I could remember correctly, Sammy was involved in that. But then again, that was more of a fun, not, getting in the machine of reality TV, which makes you film with people you don't want to film and create conflict that you necessarily would normally on a regular day-to-day basis step out and not deal with, right? So I believe she was on that. And so from the time that she was on that, and let's just say she was, I believe so. From the time she was on that to the time that Jersey Shore Family Vacation was announced, I I mean, I've said it on this channel. I remember saying, oh, wow, our minds naturally think, oh, Snooki's the star of the show. Vinny's over there doing was it the Magic Mike? Pauly D's making money as a DJ here, there, and everywhere. Mike, the situation was a situation early on. And I remember scratching my head, scratch, scratch, scratch. And I said, you want to know something? I'm talking to myself here. I say, you want to know something? I think the nucleus of that show, the powerhouse, the superstar of that show was low key Sammy Sweetheart. This is what I said in my mind. I said, wait a minute. Now, we as the viewers all want to say, oh, it's because of I don't want to say epic, because of course they certainly went through stuff, in terms of the relationship, Sammy and Ron, my namesake. And, you want to almost look and say, this is why she was so epic. And the reality is, no, there was so many more entertaining and intriguing things about her. For one, on the original seasons, she, of course, left the show at one point and then came back. So even right there, you will know, even though it's reality TV and there's not a lot of control in it in terms of what you have to do, you got to value, even back then, somebody who said, no, I'm not doing this, as she came back and everything like that. And you also got to value current times, that she chose not to do the family vacation for her own personal reasons, which is great. I think there is a certain thing where we get the pressure of like, we have to do this, we have to do that. And like I said, I worked in radio, I've worked in television, behind the scenes as well. And it's like a lot of these pressures will always be there, but it's ultimately your responsibility to give your boundaries. And I feel like I've always liked that part about her. Now, listen, I hate to keep bringing it up, that I bring it up on so many of my episodes. Please go back to my past episodes. You will see I loved, and I should not love it, but I don't know the exact quote, but it was something along the lines of, Angelina did the 2 seasons and it ultimately kind of, was a situation where she left. Oh, by the way, we are recording live in Washington Heights, New York City, so you could hear the sirens in the background, but that is just what it's going to be today. Okay, back to the lecture at hand. So what I was saying was, I really enjoyed this moment. So mean too, but this is Sammy Sweetheart, the sweetest little bitch you're ever going to meet, as she told us right at the beginning. So Angelina essentially leaves the second time, and I really liked the connection that Angelina and Sammy had on the second season, the Miami season. They both were like the cool girls. They were going to the fancy Miami hot spots. They really, to me, were always a cut above. Not taking anything away from what's her name, Snooki. Jay Wow has always not really been the wow factor. Who knows? Well, that's another topic for another day. But anyway, I just remember enjoying Miami season and seeing that, like, oh, Sammy, Angelina, like they're kind of a vibe in a way. Anyways, Angelina doesn't come back. Sammy is back for season 3. I guess they're back at the Shore House. And I remember she saying this about Dina, which is really funny that they brought in Dina. Did you ever wonder if they were going to bring in Snooki's other friend, Ryder? Like, why does anyone have any information as to why that didn't happen? Was Ryder too messy? Of that time, I'm not even sure if Snooki is even, hanging out with her, on this level all these years later. But it was Dina, and there was nothing wrong with that. I thought Dina was fun. I remember the episode where Dina kind of comes on the scene and the parents are like, you go knock them out and go have a great time. And I really liked that because it was a certain motivation that I was like, you know what, as a young person, because they were in their 20s, you should go out and have that type of fun. A lot of times we live a little bit quiet and meek and, insecure. And I really also always thought it was kind of awesome that Dina's parents were so, you're going to get on this machine, Jersey Shore, because at that time it had already been 2 seasons, and not feel, at least on camera, not feel any trepidation, like you go get them, which I thought was cool. Anyway, that was years ago. So Dina gets to the house and Sammy she says it right to the confessional, and she apparently shuns Dina because remember that episode or beginning of the season, Dina was very like, well, Sammy's not respecting me or whatever it was, to which I'm like, sometimes people are cold to you. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't mean they don't like you, but you got to get your security up. So, and not be insecure about these situations. But anyways, the part that I was like, oh my God, Sammy is like terrible in the way that we love. She says, oh my gosh, I'm just taken aback. I thought the new girl would be a little prettier. She said, I thought the new girl would be a little prettier. That to me was like, oh my God, Sammy Sweetheart will be the person on this cast that you will feel maybe isn't the big star, but low key, if you really think back about upon it and think about the original Jersey Shore episodes to when they went off the air to when Family Vacation was coming back, you would really break it down outside of the relationship stuff, which is, of course, I hate to say like entertaining, actually a little too redundant, but nonetheless, that's what you want to link her as, like her value to the show. But I just, in my opinion, I was like, no, she's actually like the most important and the most exciting one on the show. Anyway, so then Family Vacation is announced. I'm excited. I'm like, oh, great. I can't wait to see Sammy. And throughout the course of the show being off the air, everyone's doing different things. Mike's getting into trouble, et cetera, et cetera. And you're seeing Pauly D pop up everywhere. I worked in radio, so you would see him popping up everywhere within those worlds. But with Sammy, I remember she was working or in production with the Loudspeaker Network. Loudspeaker Network was by the late Combat Jack, who, of course, was in association with Biggie back in the day and kind of in his come up, et cetera, et cetera. And Loudspeaker Network was very, not the first level of podcast, but definitely in the earlier stages. And Sammy had a show with 2 other gals. I think it was 3 gals. Can't remember the name of the show, but she was doing that with Loudspeaker Network. Now, Loudspeaker Network to this, era, I don't really know if it continued on in that way. Like I said, the late Combat Jack, but Loudspeaker Network was a place where almost every podcaster, I don't think Sammy's continued on for too many years, but every person who was associated in that Loudspeaker Network, their shows have all been insanely huge. So I think there was also a little bit of a bias because the few times I would listen to Sammy's show, the three gal, just talking about life podcast, and in its sort of earlier days, I remember being like, oh, she's really likable, much more than maybe even what we saw on the show. So I already kind of really liked her. And then I already kind of followed her while she was doing that podcast journey. And then, years later, I guess you just kind of forget about each cast member, so to speak. But then that announcement, a Family Vacation, and I'm like, oh my gosh, she's one of the ones or the one I'm most excited to see. At that point, we didn't know if Angelina was coming back, right, as a viewer. Although, could you imagine the show without Angelina? Could you imagine the show without Angelina? Now, these are just my first impressions of what I feel about the new, I guess, new version of Jersey Shore Family Vacation. But could you imagine no Angelina? And we've had to imagine no Sammy. But I was devastated. I was like, not devastated, it's not that serious, but I was like, oh no, Sammy's not coming back. Because again, announcement, and then suddenly, pretty close after, you find out that not everyone was coming back, and specifically, it was Sammy not coming back. And I remember saying, "Oh man, can we trade Ron and get him out of there and have Sammy on the show?" But again, I personally, as somebody who has been in and around, these very difficult industries, never at the level that they were at, but I could relate to that. Like, you have your boundaries, you should probably take the time to chill out and do what works best for your, we say mental health and all these things, but we don't ever allow people to go through it if that's what is suitable for them. And so the thing is, while I would have liked her on the show as a viewer, like I would have loved to see her on the show, I was like, okay, she's living her own, situation, which is great. So then all these years go by, and I actually did peek and watch a couple of the episodes over the years. For me, the show is always funny and it makes a lot of sense. It's kind of quirky, it's cute, it's nostalgia, etc. I would more so say, I don't know if you watch reality TV like this in terms of a show like this. I would more so be interested based on the location of the season. Now, I understand a couple of the seasons, I think, was it the Poconos, where they had to kind of film it during, March 2020, and the world changed, and, people couldn't be around people in the same way that they used to. I specifically kind of I remember being like, okay, that season, of course, is a pass. Just the same way I think about, like, people have a hard time with Real Housewives of New York season 13 for many serious reasons, but for the other reasons, you got to remember it was during a time where you couldn't film with everyone. So, March 2020, everything changed. So I give it a little bit of a pass in terms of that. But generally speaking, when the show was being able to be filmed anywhere, it's like, I'm going to watch a Miami season, I'm going to watch a New Orleans season. I don't know that a Vegas season is going to be that interesting to me. So anyways, that was the extent of me watching the show. But I liked it. But all I'm going to simply say is that I think Angelina was so funny on this new Jersey Shore Family Vacation. I love the way she chats with her fiance about, like, oh, well, she said I said this, and if I said this, no, I did it like this. And then she was such, like, we'll go in stereotypical in terms of, like, how they all, it's always being said that, like, men, when we talk about, like, oh yeah, and then I was this, and I was boom, 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 and then, like, they almost, like, not play fight, but they play, they reenact. They reenact, like, and then I was like, boom, Angelina was doing that. And it was so funny because the boyfriend, fiance, was, like, so laid back and low key. And she was, like, kind of, hyped up about the situation. But it really did open up the door for her to say, I don't like these girls. It's going to be difficult for me. So let me at least get somebody back in the mix, which becomes Sammy Sweetheart. Obviously, casting is a little bit more to do with the whole situation, and the contracts had to be tight. But in terms of the show, I'm just saying we are getting everything that we asked for with Sammy Sweetheart. So the point of this episode really is just about my first reactions and whether or not is she that entertaining, and will this give the show more wheels? Like, will we continue to have many more seasons now that she's back? This is not a stunt casting. This is fun. She is so quick. She is so honest and authentic in terms of how she does reality TV. And I think that's kind of like also a little bit of vulnerability, because while she's a very confident girl, even in some of the way the show was edited, and the flashbacks, and her going to go check with her mom and see what she thinks, and her being, again, so fiercely optimistic and assured of who she is, different from who she was in her 20s to now she's around, I think, 36, 37 years old. She still had little moments of, like, where do I fit with this group? And I just thought that was so good. So off the first impression and off the first few episodes, I think Sammy Sweetheart is still the sweetest little Bitch, you ever gonna meet. She's still the star of the show. Remember, episode 1, Mike and who was it? Mike and Ronnie. They sort of both liked her. She just has something that when she's in the room, people want to talk with her, be around her, et cetera, et cetera. So I really feel like she was always on this show. Obviously, it's an ensemble, so everyone's important, but she was always a long lost superstar in terms of like not getting the credit for being one of the more instrumental people of the show. Anyways, the question at hand is, are you enjoying Sammy Sweetheart back on the show? Have you been following her career or her life or her dating life? You know, there was the funny scene about she dates such a variety, and they showed all the photos, and generally everyone looked kind of similar, but that doesn't mean they're the same type of person. But she's just fun. She's fun. She does reality TV in the way that like she's a cool girl anyway. It feels like she's probably like the type of person that you would, at your job you would enjoy hanging out with, and I think it just plays very naturally on camera. So I don't know. I would say 1 out of 10. The only reason I say a 9 because there is room to grow, and for her to develop bigger, more monumental storylines, and obviously maybe we're gonna get the scene with her and her ex and how that's gonna go, and it's just gonna be a level of growth. You can't watch the show and think you're gonna get exactly what you got when somebody was in their 20s. Now that they're approaching 40 years old, it's just not gonna work that way. But I don't know. They have done a really, really smart thing with this. It's created a lot of buzz. I remember I was out on Sunday with one of my friends, and we were just talking about like, how like for reality TV, I think like the Housewives is very big. So is like the TLC 90 Day Fiancés or whatnot. And my friend works in podcasting as well. And for one of the big companies. And he was like, have you seen the marketing dollars behind Jersey Shore and like the Sammy return? I was like, you know what I thought I have, but I thought it was just me being biased because I like her so much. But no, people are excited about this. So in the comments, you can let me know if you think that Sammy Sweetheart is, if we're getting what we wanted and what we missed, and how many extra seasons you think this is going to afford them. Maybe the show was on its not last leg, but like towards the end. I could watch a show with Angelina. I could watch a show with Angelina getting a little like, hey, they didn't welcome me back with open arms, but at the same time, Angelina's relationship was always different because she did leave the show 2 times. You know what I mean? So I just think it's great. So that wraps it up for today. Actually, a quick word. Let's do a quick word, and then we'll wrap this thing up really quickly. Where is it at? Okay, here we go.
Well, hello there. Thank you for watching and supporting the show with my good friend, RandomlyRJ Jr. Who the hell am I? Great question. My name is Mark Rodriguez with Mastermind Media, and I wanted to take just a moment of your time to let you know about all the other incredible things this guy, RandomlyRJ Jr. has going on. But first, before we get into that, please comment, like, and subscribe. That is how he grows here on these channels. But one channel you probably don't know about is patreon.com/RandomlyRJ Jr., where he's got a bunch more exclusive content. So please check that out. But speaking of YouTube, let's go back to YouTube for a second. He's got this hashtag randomly with Ronnie Jr. and it shows all of his stuff in his days in radio from back in the day, all the way up to present day, and his new interviews, podcasts, just videos across the board. So please check that out, because when you think about content creators, there's millions of content creators, but there's only one, Randomly Ronnie Jr. Let's get back into the show.
We have got to listen to what the brilliance that Mark has to say. And yes, make it rain on the Patreon, patreon.com/RandomlyRJ Jr. And, without a doubt, there's already a lot of episodes that are given for free. And you got to understand, in terms of being in radio for so many years, I didn't even necessarily want to get into the space originally. I have a really fun time working in radio. I'm doing a lot of radio experiences. Shall I show you a little radio experience I just had? I think I have the clip. Actually, I will. Yes. Well, you can go onto the channel and you can see all of the things, but I should tell you that while in, this is really great. And in conjunction with like, what do you call it? Like being on the East Coast. If you, you're watching Jersey Shore, maybe you live in Jersey, in the tri-state area, 94.7 The Block, along with Miss Jones, I've been able to collaborate with her and be a small part of her show, Jonesy in the Morning. Like I said, it's 94.7 The Block. It is a 90s R&B, hip hop throwbacks or whatnot. Really, really fun vibe. And I've been able to, be up there and give a little bit of like an entertainment report, this, that, and the other. New York City is a place that I've called home for like 7 years on and off. The career is always going to take you to different places, but nonetheless, I think it's really exciting that being sort of on the East Coast. And I remember one time we specifically did a report, and in the report, it's like, oh, Sammy Sweetheart's coming back to the Jersey Shore. And it's like, it's real cool to me because radio is something that I've done for a long time. And then you get to like make mentions of things that are passionate and interesting to you.
Okay, also, if you're watching television, MTV's Jersey Shore, it's been around forever, but the return of Jersey's Sammy Sweetheart is in action. She's back on the show, and big ratings, big love for her. So
come on up here.
Sammy Sweetheart, we love you.
Because you got Shore family up here. Like,
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And, I want everyone to enjoy this TV show, The Jersey Shore. I'm just a viewer. I don't got no connection to anybody in that regard, but I like it. And we got to mention it on air. And that's always cool because, again, radio in this market is, well, for one, it's the number one market in the country, but also it is very much, Connecticut, New Jersey, and New York. So it's always, in my opinion, like, oh, I should tell you, Jersey related. I love the great Melissa Gorga, Joe Gorga, Dolores Catania on Real Housewives of New Jersey. So there'll be times where we're doing our little entertainment report and I'll get to shout them out or whatever, which is just so exciting to me. Anyways, that is just me mentioning radio, but coming around to what I was saying about Patreon versus free digital content versus radio content, radio, of course, being my first love. Well, now my first love might be Patreon because that's the way you can make it rain. Sammy Sweetheart, Team Sammy, all of you, all of us. But what I was saying is, in terms of listening to what Mark said and being in support of the Patreon, yes, there is, of course, stuff on there, the content that you could get early and different. And, it's just a whole different side of even my creative process. It's really fun. I like it. But even if you just wanted to utilize that to support all the stuff that I'm doing, you do got to understand that I am cut from a different cloth in terms of I had worked in traditional radio since 2001, so I certainly never wanted to get into this space of, I guess you would call it like free digital content, on the YouTube, on the podcasts, et cetera, just because you get to a stage where you have built up your cachet and you don't necessarily want to work in a project without leveraging it with like a major company to work with. Now, everything changed. So you had to sort of go into a space of building your own, which, wasn't necessarily what I wanted to do, as I was saying a second ago, after spending so many years kind of getting to that level, starting from scratch. So I say thank you if you even consider, you don't even have to do it, but if you even consider Patreon on any level, it's just a big thanks because, again, it would be one thing to have just built up from the ground up. I told you I got close to 900 videos. That's number one. But also that I had done that after I was already like, no, I've had an agent before, I've been going to auditions up at the E building, et cetera, et cetera. I didn't necessarily feel I wanted and needed to start over and build up your own brand. But at the same token, the whole landscape of media and broadcast and everything really in that, for that matter, all changed. And so I had to. So the negative is I didn't want to do it. But now that I've done it, I'm very proud to tell you that there is upwards towards 900 pieces of content that you could check out. And the Patreon is just a way to say, I don't know, good job, Randomly. Keep up the good work, Randomly, Ronnie Jr. You could help with the set looking better, the lighting, the skincare, that way we could bring other wonderful episodes and continue to talk highly about these shows that are just fun to us. MTV in that generation, I loved the Making the Band, some of those Real Worlds. They kind of fizzled out in that little era. I know that one that I just recently watched, and I walked by the house too recently when I was in DC, was Real World DC. I always really liked. That's not saying that's the best Real World by any means. All the earlier seasons were the best, but like in the later seasons, I thought the DC one was interesting. I even thought the Brooklyn one was interesting. I've walked by that house too, out in Red Hook, in Brooklyn or whatever, which wasn't the original location. I think they were supposed to film in downtown Brooklyn, which I gotta say, I like Red Hook, but I think downtown Brooklyn would have been a little bit better. Anyways, now I'm going on a tangent with MTV and how much I used to love Making the Band and Aubrey O'Day and the band when Diddy made them go walk to Junior's Cheesecake, TRL, and how Carson Daly was such an inspiration for my own career. It just is watching Sammy back, watching Jersey Shore. It does take you to all these places when your life was a little different, and the things that mattered the most were MTV, and it's all still important, but you do grow. Even me, I'm over 40 years old now. It's like, I remember just being a fresh-faced, excited, knowing nothing about the industry, 22-year-old, starting in radio in Clear Channel, Los Angeles. Clear Channel, of course, became iHeart. And even as I finished the episode, I got to tell you, I suddenly got a little bit of a, like my knee feels a little tight. I mean, these are not things we talk about when we were young, but now just sitting awkwardly for like a period of time, and suddenly you're like, I got to get up and stretch. So because I got to get up and stretch, let's put in the comments what we think is about Sammy Sweetheart returning. Do we want to see an epic scene with her ex? I know we're gonna, but I don't necessarily need that. And also, what storylines do you want to hear and see from her? Do you want to see, just where are you at with this show? Jersey Shore, Family Vacation, Sammy Sweetheart is, of course, back. It is time to go and support the Patreon, and my knee hurts. So goodbye. None of us are as young as we used to be. I'll talk to you on the next one.
Hey, Ronnie Jr.